So to start with, the first part of this is going to be an introductory talk on the Sussex Butterfly Conservation, given to us by Bob Foreman. And Bob, I've got a little bit of a background on Bob here, for those of you who don't know him. Bob's fascination with natural history, but in particular butterflies and moths, started at a very early age whilst growing up in South Devon. It lapsed slightly after he left university for the first time and moved to London to work in the world of professional photography. However, it was rekindled when he later moved with his young family to Sussex in 1998. Bob joined Butterfly Conservation and was co-opted onto the Sussex Branch Committee in 2007. He soon realised that he was spending a lot of time with people who knew that far more about wildlife than he did and resolved to do something about it. So he went back to university and got himself a degree in ecology, and soon after graduated started volunteering at the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre. He says he must have somehow managed to persuade them of his usefulness because they gave him a job. He's now the biodiversity data lead, and his primary role is to manage the species database, which holds 9.25 million records, which is more records than any other local record centre in the UK. He's also on the committee of the Butterfly Conservation, and he's going to talk a little bit about that and the work that he does. So I'll hand over to you now, Bob.
Great. Well, thanks, Jerry. Well, yeah, hello, everybody. As Jerry said, I'm Bob Foreman. From the Sussex branch of Butterfly Conservation, amongst other things. And as he said, I joined the branch in 2007, and of course I've been a member and a committee member ever since. I have to confess to being slightly more of a moth person than a butterfly person, but that doesn't really matter because moths are just, after all, day-flying moths. They're just a number of families of brightly coloured moths anyway. So anyway, yes, when I joined, the chairman of the branch was a chap by the name of Neil Hume, who you might have heard of. And then since then, I've been through a number of chairs, and yeah, it's been a pretty productive time for me. When I was thinking about this talk, and I thought, well, I'll start off with what we've been doing recently, and then it sort of course, dawned on me that most of what happens in butterfly conservation, the good stuff, is in the summer, and really, frankly, there hasn't been a lot going on as far as the branch is concerned for the past couple of years. So I thought I would just sort of take a slightly different tack and talk to you about butterfly conservation, and particularly the Sussex branch in numbers. So here we go. It's one of 33 branches around the country of the national organisation, which has approximately, these numbers are a little bit approximate, 40,000 members, of which Sussex has 1,700, there or thereabouts. And I believe that we are the second largest branch in the country as far as membership is concerned, just behind Hampshire. There's always a bit of rivalry between us, and but maybe we'll beat them one day. Although Sussex it's a branch in itself, Sussex is of course 2 counties, and that's kind of important because East and West Sussex are really quite different in a significant number of ways, and they have a countless diversity of habitats, and they can be sort of summarized into various groups. And so we've got, this is just showing you here, this is the chalk grasslands of the South Downs and the Wealden greensand, which of course is a purely western feature of the county. But the downs themselves change enormously from the almost treeless chalk grassland of the eastern downs into the more wooded west. We've got the low Weald, which is largely agricultural, clay soils, and but with a network of hedgerows, mostly of blackthorn. Well, not mostly of blackthorn, but a lot of blackthorn, teeming with brown hair streaks and sallows and purple emperors. And so, it might look a little bit not very good for butterflies, but there's plenty there. We've got the high Weald, patchwork of ancient woodlands and gills, high Weald topped by almost upland heathland of Ashdown Forest. So, you know, there's a real diversity in there as well. And then we've got the great wetlands of Pevensey and the Romney Marsh, well, Rye Harbour really, and the coastal plain in the west. So, you know, they're not normally thought of as great places for butterflies, but they do have a extraordinary assemblage of both butterflies and moths and many other insects besides. So, but I'm not really here to talk about the butterflies of Sussex, as you know, it's about the Sussex branch. But suffice it to say that these two counties, with the variety of habitats that they do have, it's hardly surprising that Sussex has such a thriving community of butterfly enthusiasts. There's so much to see, and I am actually reliably informed that that 1 kilometre grid square just above Storrington, the one that contains Kithurst Hill, has more recorded species of butterflies in a single square kilometre than any other in the UK. So 45. So it's Sussex is undoubtedly a great place to study butterflies, or you know, just to go out and watch them. There are so many to see. A few other numbers that are relevant in my time at Butterfly Conservation. 2009, 250,000 painted ladies were observed emerging. Not these this was July 2009. In May 2009, millions were seen crossing the channel and arriving on our shores. But in one field alone, in Ditchling, 250,000 painted lady butterflies were calculated to have emerged in a couple of days from the thistles, where the first wave that had arrived in May had landed, laid their eggs, and the bred through. And so extraordinary scenes were seen there. And thank you, Martin, by the way, for the photograph. I have stolen a couple of photographs for this. But so you think 250,000 is extraordinary, but in 2012, we had a mass emergence of chalk hill blues over in Friston on the Gallops. And a couple of members of Butterfly Conservation did a survey there, and they estimated that on the day of the survey, in the small area of grassland that the Gallops covers, it was they think that there were 820,000 butterflies flying, absolute clouds of them. I got over there on the day, and not on that day, but a couple of days later, and it was just extraordinary. It was amazing to see. Slightly more sadly, 2014, no small pearl bordered fritillaries. That was a very significant number to us, because up until 2014, Butterfly Conservation's jewel in the crown reserve, if you like, for this part of the country, was the only place, if you drew a line effectively from the Wash to the New Forest, in that corner of the country, that was the only place where small pearl bordered fritillaries could be observed. So yeah, it was a very sad day when we found that the dwindling population there, which we were obviously striving to save, had declined to zero. For whatever reason, the habitat loss and changing of the climate, they disappeared. But all was not lost, because if we go to the national branch, the national organisation, there are three main strategic goals, and as you can see on the screen here, there's halving the number of UK's threatened species because of the fact that so many of our species are threatened. Improve the condition of 100 of the most important landscapes for butterflies and moths. Landscape scale conservation is what butterflies need, because they're mobile creatures, and they can't just survive in tiny patches of habitat. And transform 100 wild spaces for butterflies and moths. So Sussex branch aims to help achieve these goals, and we've had various projects that we've either been directly involved in or helped to fund, and these have all been as far as I'm aware, without well, the ones that have completed have been very, very successful. Fritillaries for the Future project, which was the is now finished. It was a funded project that lasted for 3 years, but that culminated in the reintroduction of small pearl bordered fritillary to Park Corner Heath, where it was lost, and also pearl bordered fritillaries to be reintroduced into woodlands where they were once common. Sadly, it was a butterfly that really was common in Sussex, well, in the best woodlands of Sussex, let me say, and it was reduced in numbers enormously, just surviving in a couple. But those have spread on. We've had the Wood White project helping the Wood White. That's mostly in Surrey, but there's parts of Sussex. Elms project, that was planting vast numbers of disease-resistant elm cultivars on coastal areas and in mostly West Sussex, but also Seaford. Dan Danaher's butterfly havens in Brighton, the extraordinary chalk grassland or chalk grass habitat creation, which has been adopted by around Brighton. The project has been copied. Grayling project, we're monitoring graylings on Deep Dean. Sussex is very unusual in that it's the only place in the country where we have grayling butterflies that live on chalk, or it's normally a heathland butterfly. And so there's this one surviving population in East Sussex, which we're closely monitoring and doing what we can to preserve their habitat and expand it. We're working with Ashdown Forest on restoration of the silver-studded blue, which is a beautiful little butterfly whose population is declining on Ashdown Forest. I mean, it's thriving out in the west on the Greensand Heath, thanks to the fantastic work of the Sussex Wildlife Trust there at Iping and Stedham Commons. We've got David Bridges' Wild About Warnham project, which is a butterfly reserve that he is putting his back into up near Horsham. And then also there's Neil Hume's work with South Downs National Park with the Duke of Burgundy, and that's a species which is now thriving in many parts of the Downs that was very much in decline not so long ago. So let's move on anyway. But again, it's all about the members. And we've got huge numbers of highly knowledgeable enthusiasts, to say, out in the field almost every day of the year. If there's a butterfly going to be spotted, they're going to find it, whether it's large tortoiseshells in Friston Forest or Camberwell beauties in Marley Common. One of our members even found a previously completely unknown colony of black hair strinks on Ditchling Common. I mean, we don't know the origin of this, but nevertheless, these butterflies have been flying there for a very long time without ever having been noticed. We've got species champions and people who look after particular species of butterflies. There's a sort of report on their status, make sure that their habitats do what they can to improve those. We've got all our website contributors, which Martin so faithfully looks after and does a fantastic job with. We've got our annual butterfly reports and newsletters of contributors to those. Those are seemingly highly prized sort of parts of the membership, and we've got all the people that lead all the events every when we are allowed to, of course. We've got numerous walks and talks that we give, and enthusing people about butterflies. Here we go. It's the website. Just a quick screen grab from that, which we aim to make better at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully. But it's pretty good and very popular at the moment. Here's the reports. This was a sort of kind of my project when I first joined, really. I thought we had sort of rather tawdry little black and white newsletters, and I said, let's do something better. Let's make something that people will want to read and then keep. And so these are all the ones that we've produced so far. Don't know what the cover is going to be of the 2021 report. Still to work that one out. But and possibly the most important thing that we've done in the time that I've been a member is the book, The Butterflies of Sussex, which I'm very proud to say that I had quite a bit to do with. I designed all the maps and did all the charts and a lot of the design work for the book, and that's something which is obviously I'm over claiming here. It's very much the work of others, but nevertheless, it's yeah, something which I think is Butterfly Conservation Sussex branch should be really quite proud of. Sadly out of print now, we've run out of copies, but we've still got people asking for them. So one day maybe we'll look at reprinting or extending it or what have you, maybe a second edition. So and really, well, that's just about it. There's so much more I could have talked about. I'd like to have told you more about Park Corner Heath and Rowland Wood and the work that goes on there, and so many other things. But in the time available, I think that's probably it. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. So I think, Viv, you're going to take over for the next section.
Yes, so we've heard from Bob about his work with working with the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre at Woods Mill, and also his involvement with the Sussex Butterfly Conservation, which is fascinating. Another person very closely linked with the Butterfly Conservation Group is Martin Kalaher. Now, I stumbled across Martin a few years ago in 2019 when our paths met in Storrington. He and his wife, Mary, subsequently visited our house, and we talked about butterflies and native plants with my husband, Tony Whitbread. Present that day too was Bob and Judy Palmer, also from Storrington. Bob is our local moth expert who sadly passed away just before Christmas. But in fact, I'm delighted to have Judy on our call today. So thank you very much for joining us. Before I hand over to Martin, I'd like to make sure that everyone is on the same page with regard to butterflies. Some of you may be very advanced with your advanced knowledge, and others may be beginners. But I want to make sure that we are all on board with this journey to learn about our Sussex butterflies. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to screen share now as well. So just a few very quick facts on butterflies. So in their classification, they're obviously animals, we all know that, and they are arthropods. So they have a segmented body and are invertebrates with an exoskeleton. So that means the skeleton is on the outside of the body, as opposed to ours, of course, which is inside. They are insects. So the class is Insecta, and they have 6 legs, which is their distinguishing factor. By far the greatest number of described invertebrate species are insects, but the pie chart shows that the insects is the most common species. So they are in the order of Lepidoptera. This comes from the Greek lepidos, which is scale, and ptera, which is wings. And it is in fact the shape and the color of the scales which give butterflies their color. Important also is that butterflies undergo a 4-stage life cycle. Okay, so they have a complete metamorphosis. Winged adults lay their eggs on the food plant on which their larvae, known as caterpillars, will feed. The caterpillars grow, and when fully developed, they pupate into a chrysalis. When the pupal skin splits, the adults climb out, and after its wings have expanded and dried, it flies off. All UK species have at least 1 brood every year. Some have 2 and even more. They can overwinter in any of these stages of their life cycle. And this is going to become more important in the quiz, and you'll see later. I'm not terribly knowledgeable about butterflies, but I know I'll be learning a bit about how to identify them tonight. For me, it's more about their native plant communities, the ecology, and everything that supports them in their whole life cycle. Butterflies are an important pollinator species and are indicators of the health and connectivity of a habitat. Now, Martin's very keen sense of observation, combined with the patience to provide an excellent photographic record, has made his work invaluable. Testimony to that is that his record high for a single day is a remarkable 140 butterflies and 20 different species, which is quite outstanding. So on that high note, I'm going to hand over to Martin to tell us more about his post-retirement project and how he has developed his home patch at the foot of the South Downs in Storrington to entice butterflies to flock into his garden. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Viv. The following is a very brief introduction to my Storrington butterfly garden. My family moved to Cherry House in 1993, and for the next 10 years or so, the back garden was mostly used as a play area for football and cricket. By 2004, my wife and I found ourselves with an empty nest, but also an empty back garden. And gazing over this large expanse of rough lawn, I thought it was the right time to do something different with the garden. So that year I dug a pond, and then the following year I began to create a wildflower meadow. Over the passage of time, the wildflower meadows have merged together and gradually increased in size until they now cover about a third of the back garden. But you will be pleased to know that when our grandchildren come to stay, there's still plenty of space to kick a football. Initially, my principal aim was to attract butterflies and bumblebees to the garden, but as the years went by, I thought it would be even more interesting to have a nice variety of breeding butterflies. So I did some background reading, acquired a better understanding of what the various caterpillars like to eat, and then set about trying to provide my local butterflies with all their basic needs. My efforts have been well rewarded, as I now have a running total of 36 different butterfly species, of which 28 species had bred. As well as observing and recording my garden butterflies, I also enjoy photography. And all the images in this evening's quiz were taken in my garden. As for the questions, answers, and explanations of this online quiz, they have been lifted from the 2021 Christmas quiz, which was published on the Sussex Butterfly Conservation website. The Christmas quiz was devised and written by me, and my intention was to test ID skills, but also to encourage some background reading. So I usually describe it as a bit of fun, but with an educational element. All the clever computer stuff and presentation was done by Bob Foreman. And finally, for those who do not know me, I am the sightings page editor for the Sussex Butterfly Conservation. And in this role, I read each post that is sent in and check all the photographs. So I hope you enjoy this evening's quiz. Over to Jerry and Viv.
So we're going to start now the section of the evening, which is going to be a quiz. This is a format that we're testing out on you, really. So bear with us if anything goes wrong. I think you are going to have to do some things possibly with your computers to get the best experience of this, but we'll see how we go on that. We have a set of rules here. In the quiz, as it goes through, we'll have sort of 2 parts to each question, and you get 1 point for each part. We suggest that internet use is disallowed, and I don't think anyone will have time to do anything in terms of looking up anything on the internet. Anyway, there are 13 questions. 12 of those questions has 2 parts, and there's a single answer for 1 question right at the very end. So each part of the question has 1 answer, and there's a maximum number of points you could get. If you got 100%, you get 25 points. It's up to each individual household or participant to keep their own score. So we totally and utterly trust your integrity and honesty on this. And 1 winner will be announced. Of course, there may be more than 1 person who gets a very high score. We'll see what we do about that when we get to that point. There is a prize. And hopefully someone's going to win it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to test this out. We're going to be using polls, and for people who haven't used polls, we'll talk you through with this first question, which is a test question. There are no points for this question. It's just purely a test thing. What will happen is that a little pop-up will pop up on your screen, which will be a poll. It'll have the question and a multiple choice of answers. So if I launch that now, okay, if it's blocking the picture that you're seeing, if you use your cursor and put it over where it says polls at the top, if you click on that, and then you can drag it to one side so you can still see the picture as well as the poll. So you can see that there should be an image there as well, which will have a number of butterflies and plants, and the polls have gone to the right now. And so the first question is, approximately how many species of butterflies are there in Sussex? And you've got a choice there between 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, and 41 to 50. So if people can go down and tick on whichever one they want, you may have to scroll up then to actually reveal the answers for the second question, which is the order classification of butterflies is Lepidoptera. What is the order for moths? And you've got a choice there. So in terms of the answers of these questions, question number one, approximately how many species of butterfly there are in Sussex? We got 33% said 31 to 40 and 67% said 41 to 50. The answer is 41 to 50. Quite a spread on what order is moths across the board. The answer to that question is they are, in fact, Lepidoptera. They are the same order as butterflies. And as Bob said earlier on, there are far more moths than there are butterflies. And that his view was that butterflies were just very brightly coloured moths. Okay, so we'll move on now and we'll start the quiz. This slide here before we go on to the next part of the quiz. This was recently it was an activity from the regional group where people went out with Martin and you might even recognize some of the people in there, or you might even be in that picture yourself. And they were looking for the eggs of the brown hair streaks around Storrington, which I believe they successfully found. And the question is, identify this egg-laying butterfly. Is it a brown hair streak, a white letter hair streak, or a black hair streak? And what's the shrub that it's on at the moment? Is it buckthorn, blackthorn, or hawthorn? This is in fact a brown hair streak, and it is on blackthorn. And that was the majority of people who answered that question correctly. Okay, so Martin, you've got a few things that you wanted to say about this, so I'll hand over to you to just talk a little bit about the photo and what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. So this butterfly has two distinctive white wavy lines that run parallel to each other, and these white wavy lines are the hair streaks. In the UK, we have 5 hair streak species, but brown hair streak is the only species that has 2 hair streaks, and the other 4 species have a single hair streak. So this one's clearly got 2, so it's a brown hair streak. They lay their eggs on blackthorn, with other prunus species such as wild plum and wild cherry occasionally used. Now that's the explanation, and I just if we haven't got to, if you need to speed me up, then I'll drop the comments. But I've just made a note here that I often see brown hair streaks in my garden that come and feed on the Hempagrimini, but I've only ever seen one egg laying, even though they do clearly lay lots of eggs in my garden, because my record count for the garden is 84 eggs. So they obviously come in, but they are incredibly difficult to spot. Anyway, that's it. Over to you, Jerry.
Thank you, Martin. So quiz 2. So you need to identify this butterfly. Is it a brown hair streak, a comma, or a meadow brown? And in the spring, where are you most likely to see this species? Would it be A, a well-stocked garden, B, pristine chalk downland, or woodland ride? Okay, so we've got 90% people have said that it was a comma, and that 90% of people were correct. The 48% who said a sunny woodland ride are correct. So it's a comma, and you would find them in sunny woodland rides.
Okay, a comma is an orange-brown butterfly with a very distinctive ragged rear edge. Many of us will be familiar with commas because we see them on buddleia in late July and August, and many of us have buddleia in our garden. But in the springtime, if you want to see one, because it's a woodland species, you have to go to a sunny woodland ride. And I just made the point as an extra comment that although most of us see them on buddleia, they enjoy sipping the nectar of the flowers of bramble. And later on in the summer and in early autumn, they can also be found feeding on overripe, juicy blackberries.
Question 3. And the question is obviously, what butterfly is this? Is it a ringlet, a meadow brown, or a grayling? And which month of the year do we usually see peak numbers of this particular butterfly? And as you can see, there's overwhelming popularity for the meadow brown, which it is indeed a meadow brown. And again, overwhelming popularity for July. And in fact, the answer is July. So meadow brown, and you're likely to see them in July. Okay, then Martin, some more facts and figures from you.
Okay, with the exception of graylings, all our UK brown butterflies have a row of rings or dots towards the rear of the hind wing. Now this butterfly has 2 black dots, and that means that it's a meadow brown. I'm going to skip because I think we're probably running out of time a bit. And I just said that meadow browns are common in my garden, and I have peak daily counts of 25 to 30. Over to Jerry.
Okay then, so question 4. So what butterfly is this? And the question is, at what stage of development does this species overwinter? Is it as a caterpillar, as a chrysalis, sometimes as a caterpillar, sometimes as a chrysalis? And as we can see, overwhelmingly, 97% of people who responded suggested that this was a speckled wood. Slightly more divided on this one. 3% said caterpillar, 52% said as a chrysalis, and 45% said sometimes caterpillar, sometimes chrysalis. And the speckled wood apparently will overwinter either as a caterpillar or as a chrysalis. So Martin, do you want to enlarge on that information?
Okay, well, pretty much everyone got this one right. So the speckled wood is the only UK species that has cream markings on a dark chocolate brown background. So this must be a speckled wood. This species is unique amongst our native butterflies, for with overlapping generations, it sometimes overwinters as a caterpillar and sometimes as a chrysalis. And as an additional comment, I've just made the point that they lay their eggs on coarse grasses like cocksfoot and Yorkshire fog. And although most gardeners don't like these coarse grasses, if we want this butterfly resident in our gardens, we have to be accommodating, as I am.
Thank you, Martin. Which butterfly is this? There's a pair of mating butterflies. Are they marble whites, large whites, or green veined whites? And which Sussex site might you see thousands of these butterflies in a single day? Is it Mill Hill, Chantry Hill, or Kithurst Hill? And again, you know your butterflies out there, don't you? Marbled whites, they are indeed marble whites. And we've got 41% Kithurst, 31% Chantry, and 28% Mill Hill. It is actually Chantry Hill. So Martin, do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yes, so marbled whites have a striking black and white pattern. So these have to be marbled whites, I think. At a few Sussex sites, it may be very numerous. And in a single day, I have recorded as many as 3,000 to 4,000 marbled whites at Chantry Hill. And I've also made the point that this photograph shows the beauty of greater knapweed, which is one of my favorite garden wildflowers. As a comment, I will say that in recent years, the marbled white has done extremely well and has moved away from its South Downs stronghold, and you can find it more or less anywhere in Sussex where there are dry grasslands. In my garden, I have peak daily counts of say 10, 12, something like that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful butterfly.
Question 6, and identify the butterfly. Small white, large white, or green veined white? And in Sussex, which month do we usually see the first of the year? So quite divided across the board on all of this. And you would likely to see the first ones in Sussex in around April. So Martin, explain to us why this is a large white and not a small white or a green veined white.
Well, there are no green veins, so I think we can rule out green veined white. And the cabbage whites, I've made a point in my text here that they can be difficult to separate, for despite their names, some small whites are large and some large whites are small. So it can be very confusing. The easiest way to tell the difference between small and large white is to look at the upper border. And on this butterfly, you can see there is black edging all the way along the upper border. And on the far right of our screen, there is extensive black. And when you have extensive black, then it's a large white. So the key here is that there's a lot of black on the far right of the border. So that's the apex of the forewing. And you have black edging all along the top. And that tells you that it's a large white.
So we're on to question 7 here. So are they wood white, small white, or large white? And on which of the following native plants might the female lay her eggs? Would it be garlic, mustard, common nettle, or bramble? And this is in fact a small white, or they are small whites, and they lay their eggs on garlic mustard. Okay, so Martin, do you want to talk a little bit more about them?
Yes, if you look at the butterfly in the foreground, this has 2 large dark markings on the wings tucked behind the upper edge of the hind wing. So upper central, there were 2 dark markings. Now wood whites have no dark markings on their wings, in the middle of their wings, so you can rule out wood whites straight away. And as with the previous explanation, if you look at the tip, the pointed tip of the forewing, there's just a little bit of grey there. And that little bit of grey tells you that it's a small white. They lay their eggs on any old cabbage, but including wild cabbages, and garlic mustard happens to be a member of the wild cabbage family.
Okay, thank you. Question 8, identify the butterfly. And is it a holly blue, a small blue, or a silver studded blue? And which well-known Sussex site might you visit to see one? It is in fact a small blue, and you'd find them at Kithurst Hill. So Martin, do you want to talk a little bit about the small blue and its relationship to bird's foot trefoil?
Yes, this is a tricky one. Okay, holly blues and small blues have fairly similar pale blue undersides, but the black markings are different. If you look at this butterfly, they are white or oval rings with black in their center. And that means it's a small blue, because holly blues, although they have black dots, they're all sorts of different shapes and sizes. But the real key actually in this one is that this butterfly is feeding on bird's foot trefoil, and holly blues never ever visit yellow flowers in meadows. So the butterfly that does visit yellow flowers, whether it be bird's foot trefoil or kidney vetch or horseshoe vetch, is the small blue. So the correct answer is small blue. And just as an added comment, I'm desperately trying to establish a small blue colony in my garden. I'm about halfway there. So the key is to grow kidney vetch, and I've got lots of it over the last 2 years. And last year, on one particular day, I had up to 5 females busily laying eggs. But I won't claim a colony until I see a territorial male, and I've never seen a male small blue in my garden as yet. So this year is going to happen.
Okay, well, good luck with it. I hope it happens for you. Should we move on to question 9? I think I can safely say another blue butterfly without giving anything away. And another blue butterfly visiting a yellow plant as well. Can you identify the butterfly, and where are you most likely to find one? In a wildflower meadow, a well-stocked garden, or a pine forest? It's a pretty close run thing between male common blue and male Adonis blue. And a very high thought that it's in a wildflower meadow. So the answer is that it's actually a common blue, and you would find them in wildflower meadows.
Okay, so what you need to look at here is the white outer fringe, because Adonis blue and male common blue can look pretty similar. But this particular photograph, it's such a lovely depth of blue that it could almost be an Adonis blue. But look at the white outer fringe, and if this were an Adonis blue, there would be thick, broad markings right across the white outer fringe, and they're not there. And if this were a holly blue, you'd see some very definite black lines across this white outer fringe. So since it's a pure white outer fringe, it's a male common blue. And this is again sort of this flower is common fleabane, which is always worthwhile having in your garden. And I've just made the additional comment that for people who are creating a new wildflower garden, the common blue is always great at early colonizing. You'll usually attract them within 1 or 2 years. They will find you very quickly.
Okay, that's good. Okay then, Viv, question 10. What is this butterfly? Is it a painted lady, a red admiral, or a small tortoise shell? And what stage of development does this butterfly overwinter in the UK? As an egg, a chrysalis, or as an adult butterfly? Okay, I'll end the poll and share the results. And in terms of the identification, it's overwhelmingly popular, and it is indeed a red admiral. And at what stage of development do they overwinter? The highest figure on that is an adult butterfly, and that is indeed the right answer.
I just made the point that this red admirals overwinter as adult butterflies, but few survive. And most of the red admirals we see in the spring and early summer are in fact fresh cross-channel migrants. But what is interesting is that red admirals continue to cross the English Channel during the summer months. And in Sussex, we record peak numbers in August and September. And when we see lots of red admirals in August and September, they're a mixture of immigrants and a mixture of British-born individuals. And then what red admirals do in the autumn is they then change direction and head south and head across the Channel and go back to mainland Europe. And a few do hibernate, not many. I mean, we don't see many red admirals in January, February, March, do we? Not really. We see the odd one, but not too many. So
we should move on to question 11. What is the butterfly, and at what stage of development does this species overwinter? Is it a peacock, a red admiral, or a painted lady? So I think you actually got a 50-50 chance on the identification there. And again, what stage does it overwinter? End poll, share the results, and for the first time of auditing, we have 100% on identification, and 100% of the respondents are correct. The one that fooled you, though, was the stage at which it overwinters. And again, like the red admiral, it overwinters as an adult butterfly. So, Martin, it's anything?
Well, I just made the point that with its enormous eyes and all four wings, peacocks must be one of our best known butterfly species. We have, in the UK, we have 5 that overwinter as adults: peacock, red admiral, small tortoiseshell, brimstone, and comma. And I've also made the point that peacocks actually are quite difficult to photograph when they're feeding, because they are constantly flicking their wings. And it is thought that this activity of flicking their wings is so that the enormous flicking eyes scare the birds and help protect them from predation.
12th question. It's the last butterfly. A very well camouflaged butterfly there. And I'll launch the question. So obviously, which butterfly is this? Is it a brimstone, a clouded yellow, or a large white? And how many months of the year might we see this species? Is it 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months of the year? So overwhelmingly, people have identified this correctly as a brimstone. Now, I had some privileged information on this because I believe, Martin, you saw one in your garden this morning.
Yeah, this afternoon. And in fact, I saw it again at tea time. So
right, okay.
So I was very pleased with myself. That's a week earlier than I've ever seen a brimstone in my garden.
Okay, so they do occur for 12 months of the year, and they can be seen.
Well, we're February now, aren't we? But yes, they do. Yeah, every month of the year, I have a little fly around when it's sunny. So anyway, so I've just made a point here that there is ample scope for a brimstone to be confused with a clouded yellow or a large white, but once it settles, the distinctive shape, if you look at the rear edge of the brimstone, it's such a distinctive shape, it's quite difficult to confuse it with any other butterfly. And when they, if it gets a bit cloudy and they want to hide, then they go for yellow leaves. And in my garden, they always go for the variegated Euonymus, but they might equally go for holly or ivy or anything that's got a tinge of yellow. And I just made a comment that it's very easy to attract brimstones into your garden. Just plant an alder buckthorn. And they're great little shrubs. I mean, you can keep them down to about 6 foot. And so, you know, you don't need a big garden to have one. And you're absolutely guaranteed for brimstones to come along. On my buckthorn, I can have over 100 eggs.
Okay. So there is finally one bonus point available. And the question is, I will launch it now. The Butterflies of Sussex. Who is the co-author of The Butterflies of Sussex with Neil Hume? That I know Bob said he contributed to the book, but he obviously didn't get a credit on the cover.
Oh no, not on the cover. I'm acknowledged on the inner pages.
In the inner pages,
yeah.
Yes. The co-author was in fact Michael Blenko. Do you want to say? Do you want to say a little bit about Michael, Bob, or not?
Do I want to say anything about Michael?
You don't have to.
An amazing man. I admire him, and he's hugely knowledgeable and a great writer. And he's plug his other great book, Gone, about extinct species as well. It's a fantastic read.
Yeah. So, and it is a shame it's out of publication now, that book, I think, because I think we could all.
It is, yeah. There is, you know, there's been plenty of sort of requests for, you know, a reprint, but maybe at some point in the future, an update to it would be worth doing, because it is effectively it's a book of a survey, really. It's just an account of the years 2010 to 2014 and the butterflies in Sussex over that period. So there is that scope for updating.
For updating. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, now we've got to try and determine a winner. So the easiest way I could think of this was that if I start with the maximum number of points, 25, and work down, and if anyone can claim, when we get to a point when someone got a high score, can they either flag themselves by putting their hand up, or if they just type into chat that they have got that score. 20, Robin and Vicky Johnson.
Oh, excellent.
Congratulations. That's a very good score, actually. Martin, you might have a comment on that score, because I think
it's a brilliant score.
It's very good indeed, isn't it? Okay. Obviously know they're butterflies.
Well,
thank you.
Vicky and Robin, I'm pleased I invited you.
So Viv, have you got the details of the prize there?
I have, and I can show you all, and then it's going to come to you in the post. There we go. A little notepad.
Lovely.
Butterfly notepad and some butterfly notes, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. A notepad and a notepad. So there we go. We'll send that to you in the post. Well done.
Okay. So Martin, you're just going to do a brief summary at the moment about how you went about creating your wildlife garden.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this will be very, very brief, as you can imagine. But anyway, so just to say that, okay, I'll just read what I prepared. So as a conservationist and wildlife gardener, I firmly believe that if we are to reverse the decline of many of our butterfly species, we should consider having more native wildflowers in our gardens. There are many ways to achieve this, but in the limited time available, I will mostly talk about wildflower meadows. And there are three basic methods how we can create a new meadow. But whatever method we use, we should remember that wildflowers do best in poor quality soils. So the first option, and my preferred option, is to remove the topsoil, which means that if you are working with an existing lawn, you need to remove the turf and expose the subsoil. And on this bare soil, you should scatter a mixture of wildflower seed, fine stem grass seeds and annuals. A second option is to stop mowing an area of lawn and introduce yellow rattle. And it only takes 2 or 3 years before you get thinning of the grass. And then once the grass is a lot thinner, you can then start putting in potted wildflowers. The third option is only applicable if you have a very low quality lawn, like at Cherry House, with all that football that was played. And if you mow repeatedly and if you remove the grass clippings, then sometimes all you have to do is literally stop mowing, and all those self-seeded plants like oxeye daisy and devil's foot scabious and so on will just pop up and grow well. So in my wildflower meadows, I regularly have 14 butterfly species. It's just amazing habitat, and it's just great just to have a wander around. I have also made the point that of the 28 species that have bred in the garden, 8 require grass species and 4 require common nettle. So if you want a butterfly-friendly wildlife garden, you have to think about making room for the sorts of vegetation that you wouldn't normally like in your garden. And just to finish up, I just said here that it's easy to become despondent about the decline of much of our natural world, but this is one area where we can all make a difference. So if every gardener converted just 10% of the garden to a wildflower, herbaceous border, or a meadow, just imagine what a difference that would make. So together we can make a difference. And just finally, if you want to learn a bit more about what I've done in the garden, go to the Sussex Butterfly Conservation website, click on News and Features, and then you will see my name there. Click on that, and there are 4 articles that I wrote about 4 or 5 years ago, so they're slightly out of date, but most of the basic messages remain the same. Back to you, Viv.
Well, thanks very much for that, Martin. What can I say? You know, it's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? All this fantastic, interesting information that's been thrown at us tonight. And as far as I'm concerned, I hope you had a lot of fun with the quiz as well. So thank you for joining in. But I think, let me try and sum up overall what we've heard from this event tonight. I think it's fair to say we've got around 50 butterfly species in Sussex. They are big and bold, so it's a manageable task for all of us to get to know this group of invertebrates. They're truly beautiful, enigmatic insects, and they are important pollinator species that need native plants to survive. So, as Martin said, insect populations are in steep decline in Britain and around the world, and this has been attributed to global climate change, habitat destruction, and a lack of nectar and food plant sources needed for the adults, as well as the caterpillar stages of the butterfly's life cycle. But we can all play a part in reversing the demise of these insects. Anyone with even a small strip of garden can make a big difference. So I thought we would sum up with a few key practical steps to invite more pollinators to our gardens this year. And I'm going to screen share at this stage and share with you a slide. So these are 5 practical steps we can take. Stop using any fertilizer or chemical, even if the packet says it's safe for insects. Stop your frequent mowing regime, and instead, why not just sit back and see what comes up in your lawn? Leave sections of your garden wilder, and that does not mean you are neglecting things. Yellow rattle is a fantastic hemiparasite of the more competitive grasses, but your grass needs to be scarified to show up the bare soil before it can germinate. And actively encourage native plants, and you can use plant plugs or seeds appropriate to your soil type. And I can add five more concepts to this list. If you think about your garden and think what it means for wildlife within the wider landscape, we are all part of nature and only temporary custodians of the land. You can observe, enjoy, and share your experiences. Be interested to take action for wildlife. And of course, we use iRecord to observe all your observations. And once you've entered your observation, these will flow back into the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre, where Bob will be dealing with your data. Join the Sussex Butterfly Conservation. And the chair is Jess Price, who also works for the Sussex Wildlife Trust, where she's responsible for planning issues. And of course, don't forget to join, or I'm sure most of you are already part of our Sussex Wildlife Trust regional group. Don't forget to join, get in touch with our chair, Phil Huggins, who's on the call, and use our SWT General Gmail account. And I'd like to end with saying, don't forget Martin's saying, if butterflies don't thrive over the next few decades, then neither will we. And on that note, over to Jerry.
Okay, it's just a couple of announcements before I sort of say goodbye to everyone. Within the regional group, we're looking at developing a number of projects for the next year, which will include encouraging garden change and looking at the best ways you can use your garden for wildlife. And on the 24th of February, most members, all members should have had notification of this, that there's an engagement meeting where we're going to start to outline some of the projects that we would like to take forward or we think could be taken forward, and give you an opportunity to hear about those and to consider whether you want to step up a bit and participate in some of those activities and some of those projects. That's on the 24th of February at 7 p.m. and that'll be online. The other announcement I've got is on the 23rd of March that Michael Blinko is due to give a talk on butterflies and moths at Sandgate Conservation Society, and that's at 7:30 p.m. in Storrington Parish Hall. And I noticed that in chat, it was Sarah, I think it was, who was saying that perhaps we should have an organised open day of members' wildflower meadows in Storrington. I'd be happy to show people mine. So perhaps, Sarah, if you wanted to get in touch with Phil about that, we could maybe see what we could arrange about that.
Hi.
Martin is due to be opening his up by appointment only, I think, to members of the Butterfly Conservation, and has invited possibly members of the regional group as well to come along. And that will be on the 16th of July to have a look around. So I think that's about it, really. Is there anything else?
I think if people have more suggestions, that's been great. You know, it's all about our collective effort, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think a big thanks to Martin and to Bob as well, to highlight the work of the Butterfly Conservation and to share the quiz with us. I'd say that it is available on their website at Christmas. When does it first appear on the website?
Christmas Day, and then for the rest of December and the whole of January. And incidentally, you don't have to be a member.
No, because I actually had because when I heard that you were doing this as part of my research for all of this, I actually went on. It was still up when I was looking at it, and I had a go. And I think that the thing that a lot of people have said in the chat as well about this is that it has been incredibly educative, I think, and I've learned a lot from just being involved in the setting up of this. To actually sit down and do a quiz like that, and the format of the quiz is almost the same as we've presented today, in that you get asked multiple choice questions, you get the answers for it, and then there is a written piece, which was the things that Martin was reading out, which is the information stuff around butterflies. And it is a really good education, and it's a great way about learning about butterflies. And a big thank you to everyone. A big thank you to everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. And I think on that note, we shall say goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks a
Bye,
lot.
well done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks for your lovely comments in the chat as well.
Yeah.